Today's topic is going to be Zen women. The reason why I decided to do this, uh, first I was a little bit insecure about doing this because I'm a guy. So a guy talking about Zen and women is a kind of like maybe paradoxical or something. Maybe. But this week, I don't know if you guys knew, but it was International Women's Day, and a lot of my cousins were posting stuff about that in Mexico. And in Mexico, it's particularly a big deal because of a lot of femicides going on over there. So it got me thinking of Zen and women, not necessarily about femicides in Mexico, but just Zen and women, and what do we have to say about that? So we're gonna explore a couple of questions here throughout this presentation. Are men and women equal in Buddhism? So that's the first question that we're gonna explore together. And what are normative and non-normative teachings? I came across stuff that I will explain, normative and non-normative teachings, and I found them interesting. How can we help too? So if we're not equal, then how can we help? And if we are equal, then can we still help? So this talk is mainly going to be viewed with this lens, and I wanted to just be open and transparent with, it's based on Rita Gross' book, Buddhism After Patriarchy. She has, and mainly on these two concepts, normative teachings and not normative teachings, which, again, this is her view on these things, and I wanted to bring it to you guys. So the reasons why is to create a discussion among us, because I think that's important. Create awareness if it's necessary to create awareness, and then ask the question, what can we do about it? Because oftentimes what I disliked on my professors in the university is that they posed a lot of problems and issues, but they never gave me any solutions or resources to go look for solutions. From Rita's perspective, normative teachings, as she defines it, are clearly in the ancient text, and good grounding in the Dharma. This is kind of vague, though. What is good grounding in the Dharma, right? And understood in the broader sense. I had a misspell there, but so the last kind of thing is kind of vague. So that's where people could defer opinions there. Not normative teachings are teachings simply grounded in the culture of the time. In other words, as I understood it, and this is my words, they're outdated. So that was my interpretation of it when she said teachings that are simply grounded in the culture of the time. So does this mean that we can just call meditation not normative? Nope. In this case, with this logic, we can just call things that we don't like in Buddhism not normative, and we don't have to do them. We don't have to. But that's not the point that she's trying to get at least from my understanding of it. So women have always been present in the Buddhist community throughout history, even from the time of the Buddha. So Mahapajapati Gautami, the Buddha's foster mother, requests an ordination from the Buddha. And the Buddha said no, actually. He declined until Ananda urged him. And on the third time that Ananda asked, the scripture says that the Buddha then allowed it. But they had to do under 8 conditions. So I'm not gonna go over the 8 conditions, but he did say this: all nuns are below all monks. So even if the nun has been practicing for 50 years, and a young monk is put forth, he is higher in this hierarchy than the nun. The Buddha also said the Sangha will only last now 500, not words, 500 years. Let me correct that. 100 years as opposed to 1,000. This is important because it's the only recorded time that the Buddha changed his mind. So I think that's a big deal. That, you know, it shows to me at least, the Buddha, in my opinion, was not misogynistic, and he was more like, you know, women and guys are the same, and, you know, I'll change my mind, and women can do it under these 8 conditions. Now, these 8 conditions, there are discrepancies with these stories too. So it's not just clear cut. Maybe some historians believe that the rules of this were added later and not by the Buddha, because at the time where Mahapajapati Gautami, I'm sorry if I'm butchering that name, but some historians believe that Ananda was not yet with the Buddha when she requested this, and so as well as that he never said about the 500 and 1,000 years, that later that came 500 years after the Buddha passed. So I did also wanted to say that there are discrepancies with that story. Nevertheless, let's keep exploring this further. So in your opinion, Sangha, can women attain awakening? And you guys can unmute yourselves and give me a simple yes or no.
Yes, well, without a doubt. Well,
okay, so Tom says yes, without a doubt. Marian?
Well, I was going to, you know, in tying this with my truth Dharma talk the other day, say I'm not awakened, so you know, I believe women can, but not being an awakened woman, I don't know, right?
Okay.
So, but theoretically, I would say, yeah, just as likely as men.
Okay, cool. Thank you. So let's keep going. Let me go back here, put you guys down here. What is the difference between men and women according to Buddhism? And then let's see, because you guys can see this whole thing, but I'm gonna put you guys on the side here. So in the Bhikkhuni Soma text, Mara, who some believe, and I believe, is personification of tendencies that pull us off the path, tells Soma, who's a woman, you're a woman and you can't do this. And I really love this next quote that comes from this text. She says, one to whom it might occur, I am a woman, or I am a man, or I am anything at all, is fit for Mara to address. So what does this mean? I really like this, because to me it means that this I, to not hold this I so tightly, right? And to get attached to these to this identity. Now, this is not to ignore, obviously, all the oppression that has come historically with being a woman. That doesn't mean that. It just means not to get hung up on it too much. And we go back to Sun Song. I always like going back to Sun Song. So Sun Song, this is a mural, and he's asking his students, where is this I? You know, just like Mara, just like Soma responds to Mara. And then the Basita Sutta is men and women are not different. And all of these texts I'm showing you are normative, considered by Rita. So just the intentions behind their actions is what is different in Buddhism. So in Buddhism, you know, men and women are not considered intrinsically different. Just their intentions behind their actions is what's different. So human differences are differences of ethics, really, in Buddhism. There's the Therigatha poems of the first Buddhist women who achieved enlightenment or awakening. And this, again, all our text of normative texts that Rita Gross thinks are normative texts. So in this Therigatha, no difference in awakening of male and female. So, you know, you could read it and you can compare the awakening of females and to males. Obviously, the stories within male and female are different, and also male and female, but intrinsically they're the same. Awakening, they have different patterns and aspects of the awakening. Now, let's explore the non-normative text. So far, I've talked about only normative texts to give you guys an idea of what a normative texts are in Rita's perspective, Rita Gross' perspective. Non-normative texts is women can be arahats, but not Buddhas, so not fully awakened. In the 5th century BC, in India, there is the more and the cultural ideas that affected this. That Rita, in Rita's perspective, affected this idea of, you know what, women can't be full Buddhas. So this, she says, is the fault of society, and not really the fault of the Dhamma. Another non-normative teaching is what I've already told you guys, what I've already discussed with the Buddha saying that now, because we have women in the Sangha, instead the Sangha would last 1,000 years, and now only it's going to last 500 years. Again, this was written around 500 years after the Buddha passed. So it's kind of like iffy if he wrote it or not. So Rita Gross concludes, we should set aside these non-normative teachings. And she also concludes that the Buddha was not misogynistic, but that he was androcentric and patriarchal. What does androcentric mean? It simply means seeing the world from a male's perspective. And this doesn't blame the Buddha that he was a bad person for seeing things from a male's perspective. I see the world from a male's perspective, and she also says that Buddhism was patriarchal at the time, and at the time she wrote this book, she still believes it is, because of the in some lineages of Buddhism, women can be fully ordained. So now we're gonna have discussion time, and I'm gonna pose these questions to the group. Do you agree with Rita Gross on her views of laying aside not normative texts, so not texts that see the world that are patriarchal or androcentric? Do we need to be less androcentric or patriarchal in Buddhism? Maybe we don't, and again, feel free to disagree or agree. It doesn't matter as long as we have a discussion. And if you do agree, what can we do? So I open it up for discussion time. What does everyone think? We'll have like a few minutes, not like 10 or 20 minutes, but like a few minutes of discussion.
Well, to comment on your second question there, do we need to be less androcentric or patriarchal? I'm experiencing quite an echo here. I don't know if the rest of you are. You've got men, you've got women, Buddhists, and why make opposites? Enlightenment is enlightenment, and I think that the focus should be more on the individual and less on sex of individual, whether male or female. That's kind of how I feel about it.
Thank you, Marianne.
Oscar, I have a couple of comments. This is Tom, if you can't see me.
Yeah, I can see you, Tom.
Okay, so in the Anguttara Nikaya, where the story of Mahapajapati and Ananda convincing the Buddha to allow women to be ordained as full monks. What we have to realize when you talk about these normative and not normative texts is that these things didn't happen in a vacuum. They happened in ancient India. And the Buddha was hesitant, not so much because he didn't think women could achieve their own liberation or enlightenment, but he was worried, and rightfully so, as history proved, that when women would become ascetics and would leave the home life and go sit in a forest and meditate under a tree, bad guys would come around. And it happened. And there are many stories where bad guys came around and would rape the nuns. Even this was even after they had gone forth and after the Buddha had allowed women to be ordained. So the Buddha's hesitancy, I think, was, it was probably patriarchal in a sense that he recognized the dangers that were going to become some of them. Now there were equal dangers that happened to male monks too. So I don't deny that there were threats to both. But I think we can't just take it we can't take the history of it out of context and say, well, this wasn't the way it was. Everybody was as modern then as we are now because the Buddha was, the perfectly enlightened, perfectly intelligent person. He still lived in a world that, was different than the world that we live in today. And so we can't take that out. I mean, you mentioned the fact that the Buddha had changed his mind, and part of the way that Ananda and Mahapajapati had convinced the Buddha was that Ananda asked him, well, can't women, in Theravada Buddhism, there are stages of enlightenment that, becoming a stream enterer, becoming a once returner, a non-returner, becoming an arhat, or a liberated person, freed from the cycle of samsara. And so Ananda asked the Buddha, can't they do all these things? And the Buddha said, well, yeah, of course they can. So there was no question to the Buddha that a woman could become fully enlightened in the sense that, could attain liberation and emancipation from the cycle of samsara. But I think there was just more that was at play those 2,500 years ago or so than we maybe perhaps want to give credit for today.
Yeah, that makes sense. So judging it not from 2021's perspective, but seeing the world as, or trying to understand the world from where it was before, right? Like what you mentioned, the rapes and a bunch of other things that I also mentioned, like the hierarchy in India, the beliefs of the time, and all these things that we some of them which we know, and we just haven't read about them, and some of them which we don't know because, as Marianne says, we weren't there. That's true. Does anyone want to add anything else?
Oh, I'm going to jump in here too.
Okay, sounds good.
I agree with Tom that I think that the Buddha was looking out for women and protecting them. And we might, 21st century, we're like, well, we don't need protecting. Yeah, we did 2,500 years ago. And we're still physically smaller and weaker than men. So arguably, in a physical sense, we still do today. But one of the vows that nuns take is they are not allowed to sew the robes of a monk. Now, I love this, and here's why. Because if my brother takes a vow not to ask me to sew his robes, he might decide to break that vow and come to me anyway. And I can say, brother, you took this vow. And he says, yeah, sister, I know, but I'm no good at this. Can you help me anyway? It's my vow to break. But if I take the vow, then I can say to him, brother, I'm sorry, but I've taken a vow. I'm not allowed to sew your robes. And that's the end of that conversation. So I think the Buddha was looking out for women. And I do think he was a product of his time. There's nothing wrong with saying that he was androcentric. That's what the culture was. And he's looking at it through the lens of a man. He could not do anything else. I cannot look at the world through any other lens than that as a white woman. That's what I am. That's what I've got. I can talk to other people outside my experience and learn from them. But at the end of the day, this is my perspective. So when we say that about the Buddha, it is what it is. Do we need to be less androcentric or patriarchal in Buddhism? It's a good question. I think the answer in the 21st century is yes. I think that there's still a lot of patriarchy in my own observation of Buddhism. When I have been places in my capacity as a priest and I'm around other monks and nuns and priests, and the lay people come to ask us to pray for them, they approach the men, they rarely approach the women to ask us for prayers. So these are ethnic Buddhists, specifically the Vietnamese community. So that's an interesting thing. And then there's 5 mountains Zen order, of which we are all a part. I'm not sure how many male Zen masters there are in 5 Mountain, 12, 15. I can tell you how many women there are, 2. So does this need to change? Yes, I think so. Ruth Bader Ginsburg was once asked, how many women should there be on the Supreme Court? And she said 9. She said there have been 9 men before and nobody batted an eye. So yes, I believe that there is work to be done in this area. And this is not to discount the how far we've come with men at the helm. Buddhism has survived under male leadership for 2,500 years, and we're, I believe, in a pretty good place. So this is not to disparage men and say, oh, they've done a terrible job, we need to take over. No, it's just a matter of balancing out. And then there's the whole issue of people who are non-binary, and where do they fit? And how can we bring them into the Sangha and help them on their spiritual paths? So there's a lot going on here, and this is a wonderful topic.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing your experience and your wisdom with us, Venerable. And okay, let me go to this. I was gonna write all these things, but it's a lot to write. Let's see, reasons for disagreement and cautions, reasons for agreement. So I asked a few women in my life, and I asked them what I could do to be a little less androcentric. And this is some of the things it said: listening without judgment, not taking things so personal all the time, and speaking to females about their struggles. And I think Venerable Miyota mentioned this: speaking to other females could help. And then less patriarchal is allowing women to take charge of situations, not doubting their capabilities. I know I've done this before. I definitely tout with women in my life, in my circle, their capabilities sometimes, especially when it comes to male stuff, like, I don't know, mechanics stuff, even though I'm not very good at car stuff or anything like that. Not interrupting them when they're talking, or the new way, if you call it, mansplaining, or having these kinds of conversations is also good. I wrote this because here in California, we had female monks were ordained in California. This was written September 3rd, 2010 by Tricycle. Last Wednesday marked the historic occasion in the Thai Theravada Buddhism. For the first time in the Western Hemisphere, women are fully ordained. So, I mean, things are changing very, some might say very slowly, but they are changing. And let me see. And last, I don't know why I exited out of that. Oh, and then I really like this last quote. So I found this quote in Lion's Roar, and it was an article about women in Buddhism. And this nun said, I believe we stand at the threshold between eras. In the new era, it is possible to envision gender equality, but that possibility relies in large part on the female leaders who, like Venerable Myoto, and women in our Sangha too, Marianne and Monica, who live and teach today upon those who support them. We all have a part to play in this new era, male, female, non-binary, transgender, which again, Venerable Myoto mentioned. We all must collaborate in articulating through our practices, and articulating, we are doing that right now, through our practices and through our lives, which is more important than talking, just being kind to other people. Buddhism expressed at its highest potential as a system that affirms the dignity of all beings. These are my sources. Again, Lion's Roar, a bunch of YouTube on different monastics, sutras, and the book by Rita Groves. And that's my topic for today, guys. Thank you guys for participating. And I don't know if you guys have anything else to add or any other questions about the topic.
Very timely topic. Great talk.
Thank you. Yeah. All right. Anybody else?
Add,
Yeah.
Yes, I just want to say that everything that we've been talking about in terms of gender, we could also talk about in terms of race. So that is also something to keep in mind as we work on, I don't want to say growing our Sangha because we don't proselytize in that sense, but as we work on being a welcoming group, that we really keep that in mind. When we say the 4 great vows at the end of practice, we vow to help all sentient beings, not just, white men. So no offense to the white men in the room. But yeah, but it's good to think about the differences that we have and to really strive to bridge those.
Okay. Thank you.
I think that being attached to gender is counterproductive in the long run.
Okay.
Does it really matter what gender you are? Are you really your gender? What is gender? Men have more female hormones than women have male hormones. Men have less genetic material than women. They're inferior.
See.
Yeah, I mean, and suddenly listening to what you were just saying, it strikes me as, is attached to gender, attached to self. Yeah, it's the wisdom. It's the tool, not the fool. Or the fool, not the tool. How does it go?
Okay, I want to address that real quick. And Tom, I know that you're waiting to say something, so we'll let you go next.
Yeah, Tom has been waiting.
Yes, but I just want to reply to this in case you're changing the subject. I agree with you, Larry, on the absolute level, but not on the relative level. As a woman, I have a 1 in 4 chance of being sexually assaulted in my lifetime, much higher than men. As a woman, I will make 82% of what a man of my race will make. So does it impact me on the relative level? You betcha. But on the absolute level, do I have the same chance to wake up as a man? Yes. So I just wanted to make that distinction because I think that's important. That's like telling a person of color, oh, you shouldn't be attached to your color. You shouldn't think about your color while they're being discriminated against in the workplace, while they're being called names on the street. I mean, these things are real. And it's like we say don't make opposites, but if I don't know the difference between a red light and a green light, I'm going to get smashed at the intersection. So on the relative level, we need to work with these opposites. On the absolute level, Larry is spot on. Thank you.
Tom.
I was just going to comment. You know, the Buddhist Sangha came from all classes of society, male and female, from the Brahmin class to the warrior classes to the merchant classes to the lowest outcast castes in Indian society, and he accepted them all, and they all had an equal opportunity to learn and study and to progress through the Dharma. And so, you know, as Master Miyoto was talking about, you know, expanding the availability of other people from other races and identities to the Dharma, it's an important role that we all play. And again, it's I agree with her. It's not necessarily in a proselytizing way, but it's in a welcoming, accepting way that, you know, the Buddhist teachings are applicable to all sentient beings. So yeah, I just wanted to, you know, give kudos to that indeed the Buddha was no respecter of whatever class or society that you came from.
Thank you, Tom. Does anyone have any last remarks before we sit for a couple of minutes? Okay. Yeah, I like bringing these topics because I've brought many topics throughout my time here. I never felt once disrespected and unwelcome in this Sangha. And if anything, I felt supported with starting my Spanish, you know, by Venerable Miyoto, and then Marianne letting me borrow her space, and then all of you chanting at one point in Spanish, and all these kinds of things. You know, I can't say much for being a woman, but I could say for being a minority, I felt welcome. And so, yeah, thank you guys. All
Good
right.
job, Oscar. I enjoyed the discussion tonight.
Yeah, it was good. I
Yes.
felt like I learned from everybody.
Yeah, I feel like I learned from everybody. Thank you all for the participation.
Next week,
you,
Alfonso will
Oscar. Thank
teach
you, everyone.
on something, right, Alfonso? I'm just kidding.
I think Larry was trying to say something.
Oh, sorry, Larry.
I just said thank you all, and thank you, Oscar. Very good, excellent. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, everyone. Have a great week, and then we'll see you next week.
Mwah. Bye-bye.
Bye.